Hey guys, it's the Warhipster here, coming at you with another Age of Sigmar Contrast Plus painting tutorial. And today we are painting the Vanari Auralan Sentinels from the new Lumineth Realm Lords range. I'm really enjoying painting all of these Lumineth Realm Lords, including Selenar and Teclis and all these guys. They're so much fun to do, and they represent quite a good challenge, but the results are really effective. So yeah, I'm just really impressed with them so far. So without further ado, and me rabbiting on, we are going to start painting. And the first color we're going to be using is Corax White. And this is going to be just to get a nice, good white layer over all of the armor that's going to eventually be white, instead of the Wraithbone Primer that it already is, which I should have mentioned already. So we're just using some thinned down Corax White on our palette to colour in all of these white armour panels. So we've got the big one here on the front, which looks like a piece of cloth, but it isn't. It is in fact an armour panel. We've got the helmet. Well, we've got the front of the front and back of the helmet, I should say. So we've got this bit here, and we've got this bit back here. Like this. And with that Corax White applied, what we now want to do is we're going to work on the robes. Don't worry about the armour for now. We're just doing that so we get it out of the way, and it's a nice and easy thing to do first. So, for all the robes, what we're going to do is we're going to create a roughly 6 parts contrast medium to 1 part Wyldwood mix. And we're going to use small amounts of this at a time, because what we want to do is we want to use this all over these robes. And we want to do this in these nice big broad brush strokes, because we basically want a really nice smooth coat of this Wyldwood mix over all of these sort of soft cream robes. Like this. And the reason we're using Wyldwood is that we could use Skeleton Horde, but the Skeleton Horde would make them appear quite yellow. And that's not what we want. We want them to kind of just be this slightly kind of just almost stained brown look. Because when we do the highlight for them, they look awesome. And with that Wyldwood mix applied, what we want to do is we want to now take some Wraithbone. We want to once again highlight up all of that trim around the outside. Of each of these panels, as well as pick out any of the raised details within those robes. And with that done, what we want to do now is we're going to use some Cygor Brown, and this is going to be for all of the dark leather parts. So this is areas like his boots, the straps, and his gloves. We don't want to do this on the wood, because that's going to be a different colour, and we don't want to do this on his quiver. So we don't want to do it on the bow or the quiver, basically. Just like I said, just want to do his straps, his boots, and his gloves. There's a fly very interested in the Vanari Auralan Sentinels. Anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to paint in all of the kind of blue clothy areas. We're not going to do the tassels here at the bottom just yet. What we are going to do is we're going to paint in his shirt, his kind of under trousers, and this bit here, and as well as the plume on his helmet. And the colour we're going to start with is Space Wolves Grey. What we want to do is we want to get a nice, basically just a really nice coverage of this, just kind of almost just like tint it this blue colour. This is going to act as our, effectively as our pre-shade. So we want a really solid, lovely royal blue. So we want to use the Space Wolves grey first. Just to establish something for the next few colours to hang on to, like that. Similarly, up here on the plume, just want to do this all over. And with that Space Wolves grey applied, we've actually also applied it to the fletching on the arrows, because it always pays to look at your box art, kids. You can see on the box art, at least for the Ymetrica Auralan Sentinels, that the fletching is the same colour as the kind of the pale blue. So what we're going to do next is we're going to use some Akhelian Green to darken all this blue down, but not all of it. I've lied to you there. What we're going to do is we're going to firstly use this Akhelian Green, and we're going to use this neat as it is, straight out the pot, on all of the tassels and ties that we've got around the miniature. So on this particular guy, we've got the tassels here at the bottom of his robes that we want to use this on. We've also got this little strap around his wrist that we want to use this on, like this. Just making sure that we've got all of it. Nope. Just a little bit there. We also want to use it on the laces here at the back. Like this. And we're going to do the same thing on the laces here at the front. Like that sort of thing. But what we also want to do is we want to use this Akhelian Green on all of that Space Wolves grey cloth that we've got here. So we just want to use it in like these big broad brush strokes once again, just to cover over down here. Just being careful around that trim that we've highlighted with the Wraithbone. Like this. And we also want to do the same thing on the undershirt. And then lastly, with the Akhelian Green on the plume, what we want to do is just want to pick out the central bit, like this, around that gem. But we want to leave some Space Wolves grey on either side. Kind of like when we did, like I do in my Auralan Wardens tutorial. Same on the back. Just want to pick out the strands in a line around the gem like that. What you can also do, wash the brush, is on all of the fletchings of the arrows, just take a small amount of Akhelian Green and just pick out little areas like that, and little stripes. Just add a little bit of variation across those fletchings. And with that done, we're now going to use a small amount of blue horror, and we're going to use this to highlight all of the blue. So what we want to do on like the Akhelian Green bits that we highlighted with the Leviadon Blue is we just want to kind of hit the edge, like as a spot highlight. We just want to hit the bottom kind of third, like this, to give it that impression of the light catching. We also want to pick out the strands like this of these tassels and things with the blue horror. We also want to highlight the soft close in the arm, as well as the fletchings on the arrows. And with that done, all of that blue is now finished. So what we want to do is we're going to use some Wyldwood. We're going to use this to do two things. Now, first is we're going to use it to paint in this kind of back piece that's tying all of it together. Like that. Just want to leave those little clasps there. So those are going to be gold. Like that. And then what we also want to do is we want to use some of this Wyldwood to paint in the shadow on the robes here on the arms. So what we want to do is we want to just be very careful here. We want to paint this up to the edge like this. And with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to make a roughly 1 part Retributor Armour to 2 parts Stormhost Silver mix. Or we do it the other way, 2 parts Stormhost Silver to 1 part Retributor Armour mix. And we're going to use this to paint in all of the white gold trim on all of that armour. So you just want to take our time here doing this. I'll do it so you can actually see it on the camera. We just want to pick out all of the trim around all of those white armor panels. And next up, what we want to do is we want to use some Retributor Armour. This is going to be for all those warm gold details that you can see scattered around the miniatures. So we've got areas like these, I guess, decorative areas, including the handle. On the bow, we've got the large sigil on his chest. We've got this little hanging anvil thing down here. Got the little pin holding this tassel in place on the armor plate. We've got this bit up the top here. And we've got the decorative areas and the casings on the quiver and the sword. And with that done, we're going to keep rattling through those base coats before we do any other shading. And the first thing we're going to use is we're going to use some Gore Grunta Fur. And this is going to be for all of the wood. So areas like the bow and the quiver. Just being careful around that gold that we've painted in. And using these nice big broad brush strokes just to make sure that we get it nice and smooth. It's too much paint. And with that done, what we now want to do, just add a little bit of variation to all that wood. So we want to take a small amount of Wyldwood, and we want to use this on the arrows and on the ties on the quiver. Like this. So that we get this kind of really nice little dark reddy brown. And with that done, we now want to use some iron hand steel, and this is just going to be for the silver details, which on this guy is just the arrowhead. Just there. And with that done, the next colour we're going to use is Gryph Charger Grey. This is going to be for his bowstrings, but also, whilst we're here, we might as well use it to shade the silver, which is just that arrowhead. we just want to get this Gryph Charger Grey all over these bowstrings, and then shade that silver with the Gryph Charger Grey. And with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to use some Guilliman Flesh. This is going to be for his face. You just want to be very careful here, but if you do get any of this on any of that white, don't worry, because you can just neaten it back up with a touch of Corax White. That's a little bit of a tricky angle to get to. You just want to be very careful. You're just going to move between both sides of the bow to make sure that you can work that Guilliman Flesh into all of the areas of the face. Like that. And with that Guilliman Flesh applied, what we're going to do is we're going to use some Volupus Pink. This is the last colour we're going to add just before we do any shading and highlighting. And we're going to use this Volupus Pink down here on the grip of the sword. And with that done, it's now time to add some shades to the miniature. So the colour that we're going to make is a roughly 6 parts contrast medium to 1 part Wyldwood mix. And we're going to use this to apply a small little a shade and a recess shade on all that white gold. So on the armour trim, what we want to do is we basically want to very carefully run this mix over the top of the metallic, whilst also running it into the recess of all that white armour. Like that. So as you can see, we get the shading on the metallic, but we also create that kind of depth on the white armour that's been missing up until now. And with that done, what we now want to do is we want to give all of that warm gold a shade of some Guilliman Flesh. Now, I don't want to use loads at a time. You just want to kind of add that pinkiness to the Retributor Armour that we originally did. Like this. We really don't want to kind of drown it in the Guilliman Flesh, because if we put too much on, it'll just look too, it'll take all of the shine out. And with that done, it's now time to start adding some highlights to the miniature, and the colour that we're going to start with is a roughly 2 parts Stormhost Silver to 1 part Retributor Armour mix. I'm going to use this to highlight all of that gold, and this includes all of the warm gold and all of that white gold that we have on the trim. And so what we want to do is we just want to pick out all of the edges like I'm doing here. And then we'll come back. And with that done, what we want to do now is we want to take some Light Ochre. We want to use this to highlight the edges of the bow. Like this, just to provide a little bit of variation in the tone of that wood. And with that Light Ochre applied, what we want to do is we want to use some Stormhost Silver to highlight the silver, which in this case is just the arrowhead. Like that. What we can also do is use this Stormhost Silver to just colour in the little gem on his forehead and the one here on his wrist as well. This is so that when we apply what is going to be Magos Purple, it does most of the work for us and gives us a really bright, shiny, lovely gem. And with that done, what we now want to do is take some Blue Horror. I'm going to use that to highlight the bowstring. Just want to pick out the knots and then run a line down the middle of the bowstring like that. And with that bowstring done, what we now want to do is we want to use some Flayed One Flesh. And this is to highlight all of his skin. So what we want to do is we want to pick out the sharpest areas, like the bridge of the nose, his brow, his cheekbones. And this is really fiddly because of that helmet. So you just want to take your time here and just be really careful. But if you do get any of this Flayed One Flesh on that white, you can always neaten it up again with some Corax White. And with that Flayed One Flesh applied, what we want to do is grab a small amount of Wraithbone, and we want to colour in the whites of his eyes. That's one. And then for this guy, it's much easier to kind of come at it like this. So look at it through the bowstring and then come in from the side. And with that Wraithbone applied to the whites of his eyes, what we now want to do is take a teeny tiny amount of Leviadon Blue, not very much at all, on the tip of your brush, and we just want to paint in his pupils by placing a dot of this Leviadon Blue in the center of the eye, like that. With that face done, all we need to do now is take a small amount of Magos Purple and use this over the top of those shiny, shiny gems. Like that. Just give us a really nice, bright, shiny purple gem. And with that done, all that's left to do is his base. And now the colour I'm going to be using is Stirland Battlemire. But of course you could use any that you want to do. But if you want to follow along, you can. So I'm just going to be using Stirland Battlemire all over the base. Like this. I just want to get good coverage of this all over. And with that Stirland Battlemire applied, what we now want to do is we want to give all of that a dry brush of some Tyrant Skull. And with that Tyrant Skull applied, I've added some tufts to the base. So now all that remains to do is to finish off the rim. And the colour that I'm going to be using is a couple of coats of some thinned down Steel Legion Drab. And with the base complete, the Vanari Auralan Sentinel is now finished. And like with the rest of the Lumineth, I can just see phalanx and phalanxes of this being so cool to look at and really effective with the colour scheme. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to support me further like these legends on the screen, you can do so. Head to patreon.com/warhipster or head to ko-fi.com/warhipster. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Do all of that good stuff. And if you want to be kept up to date, make sure to click the bell icon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.